Salut, it's Jennifer, your French teacher in the south of France, and in this video I'm going to talk to you about the top 10 questions that my students have asked me over the years about French pronouns. So the first one is, how can you tell the difference between a direct object and an indirect object? It's easy. Direct objects answer the questions who and what. So that's qui and quoi in French. So if you say je regarde la télévision, I'm watching TV. What am I watching? TV. That's a direct object. Indirect objects answer the questions to whom or for whom. So in French, you're going to look for à and pour, followed by a person or people. Now, the next question is, what are some common verbs that are followed by à and that take an indirect object? Because, in the first question, I said you're going to look for à followed by a person. So certain verbs that I'm going to show you here in a minute. Certain verbs don't need an indirect object in English, so you really have to learn these verbs followed by à. This is a list of some common ones. First, we have acheter à. Can also be followed by pour, so it means to buy something for someone. J'achète des cadeaux pour mes amis. Pour mes amis can be replaced by leur because it's plural. Je leur achète des cadeaux. Emprunter à is to borrow from. You see how this can be confusing? Because to borrow from in English, you would think, oh, I need a de after emprunter. But no, you need an à. So j'emprunte de l'argent à mon ami. À mon ami is singular, so I can use lui. Je lui emprunte de l'argent. What about prêter à? Prêter à means to loan to somebody. Je prête ma voiture à mon frère. À mon frère, lui, je lui prête ma voiture. Offrir à, to give something to someone or to offer something to someone. J'offre des fleurs à ma copine. À ma copine, lui, je lui offre des fleurs. So notice I'm putting these pronouns right in front of the verb. Rendre à is to return something to someone. Je rends son livre à Pierre. Je rends son livre à Pierre. I'm giving Pierre his book back. À Pierre, lui, je lui rends son livre. Donner à, to give to. Je donne à manger aux enfants. Now, in this one, we're not looking at the à manger bit because donner à manger means to feed or to give food to. What we're looking at is aux enfants because au, A-U-X, of course, is à and le, which have formed a contraction. So aux enfants is plural. I can use leur. Je leur donne à manger. Vendre à, to sell to. Je vends des biscuits aux enseignants. Je vends des biscuits aux enseignants. Again, aux enseignants, that's plural. I am selling cookies to the teachers. Je leur vends des biscuits. Parler à. Parler à, to speak to. Je parle à mon père. I'm speaking to my father. À mon père, lui, je lui parle. I'm speaking to him. Demander à. Je demande la permission à mon professeur. So I'm asking permission. I'm asking permission to my teacher. You see what I mean? I'm asking my teacher for permission to do something. À mon professeur, je lui demande la permission. Dire à. This is when you're saying something to someone. Je dis oui à mon fiancé. À mon fiancé, lui, je lui dis oui. I say yes to my fiancé. I say yes to him. Téléphoner à is to call on the phone. Je téléphone au contributeur. Au contributeur, plural, leur, je leur téléphone. Écrire à, to write to. J'écris une lettre à ma grand-mère. À ma grand-mère, lui, je lui écris une lettre. So I'm writing a letter to my grandmother. I am writing her a letter. Sourire à is to smile at. Je souris aux étudiants. Je souris aux étudiants. Je leur souris. Répondre à. Je réponds à Julie. À Julie, lui, je lui réponds. Souhaiter à. Je souhaite de joyeuses fêtes aux voisins. Aux voisins, je leur souhaite de joyeuses fêtes. So I wish them happy holidays. Envoyer à, to send. J'envoie un courriel à ma copine. I'm sending an email to my friend. À ma copine, lui, je lui envoie un courriel. Laisser à, to leave something to someone. Je laisse des devoirs à mes élèves. So I'm leaving homework for my students or to my students. Je leur laisse des devoirs. Présenter à is to introduce. Je présente mon fiancé à mes parents. Je présente mon fiancé à mes parents, je leur présente mon fiancé. Servir à. Je sers de l'eau au jardinier. Je sers de l'eau au jardinier, je leur sers de l'eau. Raconter à. Je raconte une histoire aux enfants. Aux enfants, je leur raconte une histoire. Donc voilà. So those are 20 very common verbs that are followed by a plus a person or people. So there you know that you have to use lui and leur because they're indirect. Now the next question that comes up a lot is lui both masculine and feminine when used as an indirect object pronoun, or are there some exceptions to the rule? There are no exceptions to the rule. You just have to look at the context because when you're using lui as an indirect object pronoun, it can mean either him or her. Now, how can you know if me, te, nous, and vous are reflexive, direct, or indirect pronouns? If they're reflexive, here's how you can find out. Look at the subject of the sentence, and if the pronoun indicates that the subject of the sentence is doing something to himself or to herself, that means it's a reflexive pronoun. You'll know that they are direct or indirect if the subject of the sentence indicates that someone is doing something to someone else or to something else. Okay, in that case, it could be either direct or indirect. And remember, for the indirect, you're looking for a or pour in front of that person. Right? Remember how to tell the difference. Does the pronoun answer who or what? If so, it's direct. If it answers to whom or for whom, then it's indirect. Now, when you want to put more than one pronoun in a sentence, there is a definite order that you have to follow. And here it is. Here's the chart, okay? Now, if you are making an affirmative command, the order of pronouns does change a bit. So that's what you see in these two separate charts. When you're dealing with reflexive verbs, you may have heard of the body part rule. You've probably heard me talk about the body part rule. Well, if you haven't, here's what it is. You know, when you are using reflexive verbs in the passé composé, you have to use être as your helping verb, right? And we've always said that when être is your helping verb, you have to make agreement between the subject and the past participle. Well, here's the deal about the body part rule. Don't make agreement if the past participle is followed by a body part. So that body part is going to be a direct object. It's just easier to call it a body part because when you're dealing with reflexive verbs and direct objects, the direct object will be a body part. So an example is elle s'est lavé les mains. She washed her hands. You see, I didn't put an extra E on laver. The reason why is because les mains, the hands, well, that's a body part. Okay? Concerning this body part rule, what if the body part, since it's a direct object, what if we decide to replace it with a direct object pronoun? Then do you make agreement? And yes, you do in this case, but what's the reason why? Well, in this case, the body part, since it's being turned into a direct object pronoun, it's going to come before the past participle. Now remember, the body part rule is all about the direct object coming after the past participle. That's when you don't make agreement. But if it comes before the past participle, you do have to make agreement. Now, even though être is your helping verb with these reflexive verbs in the passé composé, in this case, you want to note that you're making agreement with the direct object and the past participle, not with the subject of the sentence. So an example, elle, if we're talking about she, she washed her hands. Elle se les a lavées. Elle se les a lavées. I have to add an E and an S to laver because hand is feminine. And in this case, it's plural. So the pronoun is les. But look, I'm making agreement between les and laver, not between elle and laver. And finally, are there any tricks to help remembering, when to use French pronouns? And I don't think there are any real tricks, but there is just a little list of rules that you can learn and use as a guideline. You're going to use me when someone is doing something to me or for me, or when I'm doing something to myself. The same is true for te when someone does something to you or for you, nous when someone does something to us or for us, vous when someone is doing something to you or for you. Now remember, the vous is plural or formal as opposed to te, which is going to be singular and informal. Now, le means him or it if the object is singular and masculine. Remember not to use le when someone does something to or for a person. Remember, to or for a person, we're not going to use le or la or les, because the a that comes before the person, that's going to indicate that it's indirect. Okay? So la means her or it if the object is singular and feminine. Les means them, whether you're talking about people, animals, things, masculine or feminine, it's les. Okay? We go back to lui. Remember that lui can mean him or her, and it can refer to people or animals. It's indirect. So we're going to use lui when someone is doing something to or for someone. Okay? À quelqu'un, pour quelqu'un. Leur is the plural. It means them, masculine, feminine, people, animals, whatever. But you're going to use leur when someone is doing something to or for someone. Again, you're looking for à or pour in front of that person. The pronoun I. The pronoun I means there, usually, but it can also mean it. Because remember that I can refer to places or things, but never people. You're going to use I when you have a preposition followed by a place or a thing. D'accord? Not just any preposition, though. There is an exception. You're not going to use I when the preceding preposition is any form of de. Because if the preposition is de, then you're going to use the pronoun en. Okay, en means some. It can also mean of, like some of them. It can mean any, or it can mean one. It can refer to a quantity. So here's when you're going to use en in these situations. When you have a noun that is preceded by any form of de, when you have a noun that is preceded by any number, and remember that un and une are also quantities. They don't just mean a and an, they also mean one. And you also use en when you have a noun that is preceded by any expression of quantity. And finally, a lot of people tell me, I thought lui could only be masculine. And so here's the thing to remember. When lui is used as an indirect object, pronoun, it means either him or her. You just have to look at the context to know which one it means. When lui is used as a disjunctive pronoun, it means him. So like if you're saying, I'm going to his house, for example, je vais chez lui. Well, then that means his house. If you want to say I'm going to her house, you would say chez elle, her house. D'accord? Donc, Voilà, those are my questions, the questions that are most frequently asked to me by my students about French pronouns. Merci, à bientôt.